Yes, welcome to the No State Project here live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona, where it is a gloriously beautiful day. We're in September now. It is September 8th, 2018, and coming to you live, of course, the fortified compound here on my YouTube channel, No State Project, but of course streaming live, as always, every Saturday. Well, most Saturdays. Last week was a disaster, but from LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, we got 3 hours of anarchy radio as we do well, actually 4 hours weekly. So if there's something that's presented here on the big broadcast that you don't agree with, got the facts wrong, got the logic wrong, you just think it's wrong, give us a call, 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020. That's 2020 with the pound sign. We'll get you into the queue there. I know we've got people getting lined up, and I do always appreciate that. But even though I have a whole bunch of stuff that I need to get to, we'll do that after the calls. So one of the things I'm going to discuss is why people give so much credibility to lawyers and judges. It's astounding to me that anyone would still, in this day and age, with all that we know about lawyers and judges, that somebody would still have to come out and say, well, I'm right because lawyers agree with me. Lawyers tend as a group to be, pretty damn dishonest. And if they're prosecutors or judges, then it's off the charts dishonest. And that doesn't mean that every single one, but, in my experience, most of them, it's pretty bad. So what I want to do is go through this whole hypothetical crap that this latest criminal named Brett Kavanaugh has put on display this week. So we'll get to that. We also have another cop has killed somebody, this time in their own apartment, and they're claiming that they were they mistook it for their apartment. See, the numbers that are on the doors, not enough for a cop. Oh, I had the wrong apartment. This isn't my apartment. Oh, my gosh. Actually killed him. So this cop is learning the hard way. When you do your murdering as a cop, do it on the clock. That's what they'll always say to you. That's what the union will tell you, I'm sure. So, all right, we'll get to all that. We got a lot of stuff to get to. Let me get, we were supposed to have him on the show a few times, actually, we've been trying to get him on for a while, but it just hasn't worked out. And I think we were all ready last week, and we know what happened with the big show last week. But this time, barring any tech surprises here, which I don't think so, but we've got Kevin from Brisbane. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Mark. It's good to be back on.
Hold on. I'm sorry, repeat that?
I was just saying, yeah, thanks, Mark. It's good to be back on the show.
Oh, good to have you, my friend. It's about time. So, what is going on that you've been actually patient enough to deal with the tech issues and wait a few weeks to get on?
Well, just with a bit of background, for those that may not have heard the show, probably about 9 or 10 months ago, called in just to let people know that I've been ringing up different government departments, not necessarily that I had anyone violently aggressing me from those departments, but just a bit of practice and experience trying to get the evidence of jurisdiction where there was none available, and even to the point where I rang up the Federal Attorney General's office in Canberra and basically got to all the end of, after an hour-long talk, and then he was saying I was asking philosophical questions or making philosophical arguments, and then getting to the point where is the Constitution then philosophical? They're practically applying the Constitution. So after that, he didn't want to, go through it any further. So going to the highest point in government and then them not being able to provide the evidence, that just means there isn't any evidence. So I recently had a minor traffic.
Well, Kevin, hold on a second, mate. Let me just jump in here. So you're telling me you went to this highly educated doctorate-holding bureaucrat, and he didn't give you the internet wisdom that, dude, you're here? That proves the laws apply to you? He didn't give you that brilliant answer?
Well, he gave lots of different answers, all the way from the acts to the legislation to the constitution, all the way through to UK Parliament, because our constitution came through from an act from UK Parliament.
Yeah.
And then he goes through and further and further to, you know, basically kings and queens and then God. So it basically...
Whoa, wait. He said God.
Well, I sort of brought it into it because basically, you know, it was the divine right and all this type of thing. And I was basically asking, well, if that is the case, and I was trying to get it, just like if someone made that sort of claim today, you'd think that they were nutters, but that's how we base our legal system on. So basically it comes down to some king or some religious group has said, oh yeah, this, they've got the divine right and it comes from God basically. And that's so.
Well, real quick, because it's not, it should be laughed at when someone says, divine rights here and they're from God. But, in Arizona, if you look at the state seal, okay, and I'm going to really screw up my Latin here. So I deserve being made fun of with this, but it's ditat deos. And, would you venture a guess as to what those two words mean?
I don't know, seize the day, something about the day.
Well, Dios is always, God. And, ditat, I believe, is work. So they're saying that Arizona, the state of Arizona is the work of God. I've got the internet at my fingertips here. And so I probably should have, I probably should have looked that up before I did that. So, no, it's not the work of God. It's God enriches. So, okay, I made a mistake there and I will correct myself. Ditat Dios is God enriches. So.
Yeah, and so it basically comes down to you ask them, well, is there evidence that God actually did this? And then, is there actually evidence that God exists? So it all falls apart. But also within our constitution, I'm not sure what it's like with your constitution, but we've got a section 116, which basically means that no rules or laws can be enforced if it's to do with a religious observation. So basically they're basing the whole constitution on a religious observation. So that section should negate the constitution in itself. So that was one question I was going to ask you, whether you could actually bring that up, even though I know you don't like to use the constitution, but if it sort of goes against what they're actually saying, it might be able to be used in such a way.
If you look at it, I don't know how. It sounds like they would probably say it's more a ceremony, just like the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. Well, that's not actually part of the Constitution. It's just setting things up, because if it's not supposed to be based on some kind of religious principle because the Ten Commandments does, as far as I know, still say thou shalt not steal, and then they have laws against stealing. So. It's not like everything religion-wise is something that we just toss out and don't consider. They even still have adultery laws, for heaven's sakes. So, but I don't think that I would use something like that. No, I think it's interesting, so that you were able to go to the highest and get actually some dialogue like that. And so what I would put out there, because it's a very common thing that I have happened to me, where you're asking for evidence that the Constitution applies, and they start talking about the code, because you mentioned the code and acts of parliament and whatnot, as if, so what you want to do there, is basically ask them, well, how does the act prove that the Constitution applies? So I got to put you on hold a second here, mate. We are up against a break. My name's Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel. And we're talking with Kevin from Brisbane, Australia. So we'll be right back here in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and a fantastic blues guitar playing that you're hearing, if you got the live stream on LRN, of course, is my good friend Chris Case. So if you are down in Key West and want to see some great blues, he still performs down there, as does his partner there with Double Bucci, Caffeine Carl Wagner, who both fantastic guitar players. I can only hope one day that there will be a Double Bucci reunion, but till then. And I still need to get that posted on the webs here on YouTube so people can enjoy actually the whole concert. Well, most of the concert anyway. Great, fantastic stuff, Double Bucci. Anyway, we're talking with Kevin from Brisbane, and I want to bring him back here on the big show. It's interesting. So when he runs into trouble, when you were asking him these questions, he can't actually show that there's any evidence whatsoever to show that these rules, these magical rules that they have called constitutions and laws. He actually hit you with that you were asking a philosophical question, and he thought, and so do you think that was just in an effort to avoid answering the question or admitting that he had no evidence?
It was, yeah, probably both. It was probably got to the stage where he had run out of ammunition, and I wasn't, obviously by listening to your show, knowing that there is no such evidence, is you just keep pushing the point and just keep asking questions, and that's what he came down to. Was it's basically I'm asking philosophical questions, and then I ask, well, they're practically applying the Constitution, so it's how is it philosophical? Then that's when he was like, well, you know, in my position I can't say any more, and he didn't really want to speak to me after that, but he was quite amicable throughout the whole time. But when it comes down to right to the end of it, there's no substance at all to what they're saying.
Right, and you know, I've done videos about this because there's a particular critic that just hangs on every word, and you know, what I glean from some of the comments, that there's videos put up on every show that I do practically, and it's okay, you know, if someone wants to spend their time breaking down and critiquing my show. But I've caught a lot of flack from this guy simply because you know, when you ask for evidence to support a claim, such as they're saying that the Constitution does, the Constitution, an actual objective, you know, this isn't it. It's a written instrument. When you ask for evidence to support their claim that it applies to you and creates obligations on you, when they give you a non-responsive answer, like what this guy did, saying like the code, or because it's the law, when you point out that that's not a responsive answer, that's not actually showing any facts, then they say, well, if you don't accept a non-responsive answer that it's the law, then you're arguing philosophy, and that doesn't belong in court. That has always bewildered me as to, and it can only be trolling at that point, right? I mean, when you're asking somebody for facts and they give you an opinion and you point out that that's not responsive, that doesn't change the nature of what you're doing. And so instead of, you're not just asking questions, now you're just being philosophical. That is astoundingly stupid. And to continue to push that and the narrative that we're idiots or I'm a scammer because I'm arguing political philosophy when I'm asking a question. So again, just to remind people, what bureaucrat were you speaking to? An attorney general?
It was the Federal Attorney General's office, but he was a constitutional lawyer. So he deals with the Constitution all the time, and I've never studied law at all. And anyone can do this using the Socratic method, is get a constitutional lawyer to be able to not be able to answer the claims regarding the Constitution as an actual document that binds anybody.
Yeah, you know, if you want to see a lawyer or a law professor with integrity who actually answered honestly, go a couple years back. His name is Robert Diab. He is a PhD in law. He teaches law at a law school up in Canada. I can't remember exactly which one, but he admits the honest to goodness truth. There is no evidence. Jurisdiction is a blunt assertion of power. It is not based on evidence. It is not based on argument. It's not based on logic. It's do as we tell you or you get punished. So this guy had to go and use the philosophy thing, because when you're asked for proof of your claim and you turn around and someone says, philosophy, you're dealing with somebody who's basically throwing in the towel. And it's no different than what's happening this week with the confirmation hearings, which are a dog and pony show here in the United States, of this Brett Kavanaugh. So the philosophy is the same tactic that he's using when he says that's hypothetical. Well, it's a hypothetical. Yeah. I'm not going to answer the question. And what they're doing is saying, I am an irredeemable scumbag, and I am not going to answer your question because I don't want to look bad. So instead of being a man, instead of being a damn adult, I'm going to use a douche move, and I'm going to say, you don't like that I don't give you facts? How about fungool, you're arguing philosophy, and I can wash my hands on the whole situation. Imagine, Kevin, we try to get away with that on let's say we're being questioned, right? Imagine us trying to say, when they say, did you willfully refuse to file a tax return? And you sit back and say, you're asking a philosophical question. I can't answer it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a hypothetical. I can't answer.
It also goes back to where they'll make a claim that you're a citizen in the country because you were born here, or a resident in a place because you live there. And I know, and I've done this as well. You bring up the circular logic. They're just basically making assertion, and they're saying, these words on a piece of paper are true because the words on a piece of paper say that they're true. But I'd like to also, and let me know if you think this is a good way to deal with it. But if they say, oh, you're a citizen because you were born here, if you just transpose that one word citizen and use a word like leprechaun and they said, well, you're a leprechaun because you were born here, it just makes no sense at all. Where's your evidence? Where's your proof? Just because it's written down that I'm a leprechaun because I was born in Australia or wherever, it's just ridiculous to think that just by writing in citizen, that's proof that you're a citizen. So that's another way to sort of show how ridiculous that is.
Yeah, and what I bring out too is the original claim is if you are physically in Australia, then the magic rules called constitutions and laws apply. And the idea of you being a citizen presupposes that just because you're physically in Australia, that these magical rules called constitutions apply. So what I do is that, well, aren't you presupposing your argument's already true? Aren't we trying to get as to what facts you have to prove that just because I'm physically in Australia, that your rules apply to me? To say that, well, you were born here, that makes you a citizen, that presupposes that if you are born or physically in Australia, then the Constitution and laws apply to you. And that is usually sufficient, to get away from that. And here's the thing. They don't believe you have to be born in Australia. I have to meet you up a second, Mike. We're up against the break-in. They don't believe that you have to be born in Australia for the laws to apply. So your birth in Australia is completely irrelevant to the issue of whether the laws apply or not. We'll be back with Kevin from Brisbane in just a moment, talking about philosophy of all things. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live, of course, on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And that's, we're talking with Kevin in Brisbane, Australia. And, this idea, look, we have to recognize the tactics of these people. And people who are honest will answer your questions. They won't take and make dick moves such as like this colossal scumbag, Brett Kavanaugh. And I wish that some lawyers, like Kamala Harris, is a bureaucrat, but she's also a lawyer. She knows how to question people, but they let them get away with that. And, when you're in a hearing, put them on the spot and don't let go. Really expose these people for the scum. But that's again, you've got criminals trying to expose, their fellow criminals. And it's all a dog and pony show anyway. It's not meant because, honestly, it would be so easy to make someone like Brett Kavanaugh look as dishonest as they really are by asking them the questions, which is primarily why they will say to you, Kevin, and the apologists here on YouTube, they will say judges don't have to answer your questions. And to think of the audacity there, that they're not just regular human beings, right, mate? They are exalted. They're honorable. And the idea that they can force you into these proceedings on the threat of jail and sometimes death with an arrest warrant, And the idea that they are so arrogant to say they don't have to answer your questions. It's just like the politician that calls a press conference so that they can get their spiel out. And then when they're done spewing their garbage, they say, I'm not taking questions today. What? So I know we covered a lot of ground with this philosophy douche that you spoke with. But I know there was other things that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, so basically that was the background. So I know that there's no real evidence of jurisdiction, and I've recently had a minor traffic infringement. It was just a minor speeding fine, and so I've rung up the public prosecutor, police prosecutor, regarding that, asking for evidence of jurisdiction, and I've got a 12-minute audio clip with that. Whether you wanted to go through that, and it shows, like you were saying before, about the tactics. He tries, gaslighting and saying, it's impossible to answer that as a yes no question, and then going down the track, he actually answers it. So there's so many things that you can bring up out of this particular call of shame that some of the viewers, and I've heavily critiqued myself on this, and it was very hard even to get half a word out because he just kept rambling over the top of me. So whether you wanted to go through that.
Well, let's see. We'll give it a go. We'll see how the audio sounds.
All right, I'll press play and see how we go. Here we go. So, firstly, just like to ask you, are you qualified or an expert in the applicability of the law to me or anybody?
I'm a police prosecutor, and I'm admitted as a solicitor of the state of Queensland, so I guess I am.
Okay, right. So is it your position that because I am physically in Queensland that the law applies to me?
Okay. Look, where are you getting the pre-formatted list of questions you're getting?
I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking.
Well, you're obviously reading from some questions you've written down somewhere.
No, this is just off my head.
Off of your head?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, ask me the question again.
Is it your position that because I am physically in Queensland that the law applies to me?
The laws.
The laws that's under this offence, so the what is the Road Infringement Act or whatever it is. Yeah.
In simple terms, if you've got a speeding ticket that's related to a camera-detected offence, then a speed ticket in the state of Queensland, then it's an offence detected in the state of Queensland. To be an offence, it means that there's an action contrary to a state law.
Yeah, so what I'm after is it your position that if I'm physically in Queensland that the law applies to me? Yes or no?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer because there is no yes or no answer on it, Kevin.
So there's...
You're asking an impossible question. So what's the infringement notice that you relate to? Let's start with that one.
Infringement, what is it?
What's the infringement notice number?
Yeah, 206.
Yeah.
269.
Yeah.
5393.
5393. Okay, so speed offence detected by a electronic device. A white vehicle with a number plate 72RAT on it. Is that the one you're looking at?
That's the one I've got in front of me, yes.
Yep. Okay. What do you need to know about it?
Well, I'm just asking regarding, like you said, you were expert in the applicability of law, and I'm just asking, is your position that because I'm physically in Queensland that these laws apply to me?
Well, it's a speeding offence on Payne Road, the Gap, which is a locality in the state of Queensland. So because the offence has occurred in Queensland, then the Queensland laws apply to it, yes.
Okay, so what evidence are you relying on to support that claim that just because I'm physically in Queensland...
It's not a claim, it's a camera-detected offence. So if you look in the legislation, which is available online, there are things, an act called, or a regulation called the Traffic Regulation of 1962 contains a number of sections and also schedules. The schedules in the back of the regulation describe what is a photographic detection device, and it names the Vitronic polyscan device that was used on that occasion as an approved photographic detection device. you go then to the Transport Operations Road Use Management Act of 1995, Section 113 sets out what a photographic detection device is, and then steps through a number of other parts of legislation. The Transport Operations Road Use Management Road Rules Regulation of 2009 are essentially the offences that a person can be issued an infringement notice for in the state of Queensland. It also sets out some exculpations of law which a person can raise fairly in defence of an allegation of an offending behaviour. So in sections 20 and 21 of the road rules, it sets out the offences of speeding that we rely upon, that the infringement notice is issued for.
Okay, so what evidence are you relying on that those acts actually
There's a photo taken of your car speeding on a Queensland road. That's the evidence relied upon. So you're asking a question, it's very weirdly worded. And it sounds to me like you're reading from a script.
No, I'm not reading from the script. I'm just asking for you're saying the evidence is the camera footage. But wouldn't the laws need to apply first before that camera evidence?
I just stepped you through very briefly the laws.
Yeah, so
the traffic regulation sets out what we can use as a speed detection device or a photographic detection device or a red light camera device. Okay, so that's one piece of legislation which sets out what we can use. The Transport Operations Road Use Management Act sets out how we can use it. And then the road rules create the offence for which it can be used.
Okay, so what evidence are you relying on?
Taken by the device on a Queensland road at a location. You know it's a location in Queensland because there's a location code on what's called the data block at the upper part of the image. And in your case, it shows that it's 719, hang on, what is it? It's a bit hard for me to read from this. 719132201 is the location code. That relates to a entry in what's called the traffic coding manual, which is
All right, you're going to have to mute that up, mate.
Maintained by the Queensland Police Service of a...
All right, we're speaking with Kevin in Brisbane, and we're listening to a recall he made with a police prosecutor regarding evidence that that the laws apply, and we're getting everything but that. But it's an interesting call, so we'll hear the rest of that in just a few moments here on LRN.FM and my YouTube stream, No State Project. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. We're listening to a recording that Kevin in Brisbane made with a police prosecutor, and one little critique is, it's easier to just stay on point when they start pulling that stuff. Do you believe that your laws apply just because I'm physically in Brisbane or in Queensland, and that's the basis of your jurisdiction? And nail it down to the foundation is the Constitution, which is supposedly the authority for the code. So all the code sections, he's talking about 1962, 1995, 2009, all that has to come from the authority of the Constitution. So that's the supreme law. So it's easier to focus on that. So let's hear the rest of this recording and we'll talk more about it. All right, Kevin.
Let's go.
Let's see the rest of it.
Sites where camera detected offences can be detected. And that then sets out where we can deploy the device, and when we go there and deploy it in that way, in accordance with the legislation, and it detects an offence, then we issue an infringement notice.
Okay, so my question again then is, what evidence are you relying on that those acts apply to me just because I'm physically in Queensland?
Yep, exactly. You've answered the question with your question.
How have I done that? What evidence are you relying on that those laws apply to me because I'm physically in Queensland?
Well, okay, then I'll answer the question with the question. How do you say they don't apply to a person in the state of Queensland?
I'm not actually saying that. It's the police or the government that are claiming that they've sent out this.
It's not a claim.
They've sent out this offence notice.
It's an infringement notice. It's a document issued under the State Penalty Enforcement Act.
So
it's a first and final notice, and if you don't take action in regard to the notice, in the matters prescribed on the rear of it, then there's a default process which will be...
That's what I'm trying to go through. I'm trying to get this matter resolved.
Well, what you're trying to understand, sir, you're accused of doing 61 and a 50 zone. Sorry, the vehicle is recorded doing 61 and a 50 zone. If the infringement notice is issued to you, then you are what's called the responsible person, and you're dealt with in law as if you were the driver, even though another person may actually have been the driver. So in other words, for argument's sake, if hypothetically your wife, if you have a wife or your husband, partner, whatever you have, your best mate, your auntie, your uncle was driving the car, but if the car is registered to you and it gets caught by a camera detected offence, the infringement notice goes to the person who is recorded by Department of Transport and Main Roads as the registered operator of the vehicle.
Yeah, can we just get back
so the infringement notice then goes to you.
I comprehend that process.
Excellent. Then you understand why you've got the infringement notice.
What I'm trying to ask, you've asked me why I don't think that this applies to me.
Yep.
But it is the government that are making the claim or saying that the law does apply. So basically, I'm asking for the evidence that these laws apply because I am physically in Queensland.
All right. So you need to understand why the infringement notice is issued to you, sir. And the infringement notice is an allegation that an offence has been detected. Okay. So there's an allegation that there's an offence detected, namely a speeding of a vehicle at 60 ton in a signed 50 zone or in a default 50 zone. As the speed limit applying to the section of road where the photograph is taken at the time was 50 kilometres per hour. The device detected the speed at 61, and that's why the photograph is taken. When the infringement notice goes out, the person gets 28 days to either accept that the speeding offence is committed and to discharge the debt or assign it to somebody else if there was another person who was responsible for the offence at the time. So in other words, if another person is using the vehicle with your consent, then you name that person, provide the details in the prescribed way, and the offence then transfers to them. If you choose to finalise the matter, then that means you accept that the offence alleged is the offence committed. Infringement notice, then you pay, or you divert the spur, or you discharge by a fine option order, or whichever method you undertake to resolve it. If you do not accept the offence by issue of the infringement notice, then you complete the election for court. There is no requirement on the Queensland Police Service to provide you with any further information unless you were to contest the matter and the matter is then reverted to a court process. Where in a court process, when the prosecution raises the summons and provides further particulars of the offence on the summons, if that does not resolve the question for you and you elect then to go to trial, then a brief of evidence is then prepared. It's not cart first then the horse, it's horse first then the cart.
Well,
and that's the way that the law works. The same in a civil process. Someone makes a claim against you, you can either accept it without admission and resolve the matter in terms described, or you can contest the matter.
Kevin, I think I gotta jump in. Yeah, I think this is. I don't think is maybe if there's some big thing coming up in the way this ended, but it does it just continue the same way until the end of the call?
Oh, it's probably only about another minute or so. Basically from there he asked me a question regarding do I have a driver's license, and then I was trying to ask a clarifying question which he didn't like. He was trying to make out is it. It's not a trick question or anything like that. And I was just asking a clarifying question: is the driver's license evidence that the laws apply to me? And then he basically said, "That's it. I'm ending the conversation," and hung up. So.
Okay. Well, just as a critique here, which you could have done better was to keep him more on point because it's an issue of jurisdiction. It all comes down to that. So whatever the laws say is irrelevant if there's no jurisdiction. So. Damn. So, what you could have done, look, isn't the basis of your jurisdiction, your claim that just because I'm physically in Queensland, that your laws apply? and keep it focused on the jurisdiction. And so, because you narrow the scope too much to the acts and made it easier for him to stay in a discussion on the acts as opposed to talking about the Constitution, which is the authority for the acts. So for the acts to be applicable, the Constitution has to be applicable. So that's why it's best to focus on that. And if he's giving you an issue of crap like this, then bring it back. Look, sir, the issue of jurisdiction, is it based on if I'm physically in Queensland, your laws apply to me? And that should keep it, the focus where it should be. So then if he tries to use the act, then you can say, well, let me ask you a question, mate. Are you saying that the act is proof the Constitution applies to me? And if he does answer that, then it's easy enough to just say, well, how does that work exactly? Explain that. So, and he did try to flip the burden of proof on you, and you put it back on him, but I would have just included, sir, isn't the burden of proof on the one who makes the claim?
Yeah, right. And in regard to the Constitution, and I suppose that's probably the best way to go is like to try and work out where the authority is to get that on track. But I think I was trying to get him to say it's this and it comes from this and that, and so I can use his words to clarify his position. But I suppose that's probably, like I said, the best thing to do is asking where the authority comes, like these acts comes from, and just a leading question regarding the Constitution, and then, it makes it a lot easier to sort of to go through that.
Yeah, because typically what will happen, because I'll ask, is it your claim that just because I'm physically in Arizona that your laws apply? They'll always say yes. And then they don't like when I get specific and say, and now once I get that general, they confirm the general, then I get more specific. And that's when you can tell that their heart's beating faster, because now you're raising the Constitution. And, well, you didn't say anything about the Constitution. I said, well, I asked you if your laws apply to me just because I'm physically in Arizona. You said, yes. Doesn't that include the Constitution? Isn't that the supreme law? Well, see, they're not even remotely prepared to discuss the applicability of the Constitution, because all they can do is regurgitate what the code says.
Yeah.
See, that's there, and let I've countless times I've had them say this stupid thing that it really is stupid, but I think they're in a bad situation that's very uncomfortable, and they want to get around it, especially because they will be like you, and they'll say that they're experts, or at least proficient at their job, and then now they're going to turn around and they'll say, well, that the Traffic Act is proof that the Constitution applies, and then when you ask, really? Then how does that work? Exactly. Could you read me the section? Look, you know what? I'll give you time to get back to me. Show me the section of the Traffic Act that says it's actually evidence that the Constitution applies, and not the other way around. We'll finish up on the next segment, mate. So let me just mute you up. My name's Mark Stevens, listening to the No State Project. We're going into the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the big LRN.FM and my YouTube channel, No State Project. So again, for those on the YouTube stream, we got about 5 minutes, so that's why I'm not going to be speaking. So, and what I mentioned, I'm probably gonna, like the last video, like I used to always do, I'm probably gonna pull the live stream down and just have the audio only of the broadcast, and that'll have all the breaks cut out. So keep that in mind. So I don't want to hear, I don't care to see any stupid comments that I'm purposely deleting, comments that, I know I have a history of doing that. I have a long history of pulling the live stream down, especially since Wednesday I had to use the OBS software and it looked terrible. So I'm glad I had the backup video for that. But I will be back in just a few moments. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. We are back here live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Streaming live, of course, on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And glad to be with you here for the second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio. I know people who are, new people all the time. The reason why on every quarter of the hour there is no audio is because we are actually doing a live radio stream. And there are commercials. And so that's why. And again, like I said so many times, it helps the editing process because I'm a one-man show. And I have support. I do appreciate the support of Jan and the dude, Don, and of course Nelson. and Dan and Bill in New Hampshire. But as far as the nuts and bolts of doing the actual production of the show, it's all me. So that's why I don't talk during the breaks. It's a lot easier. So if you've ever used Audacity, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just a straight line, and I cut that out, and we get to do that. So anyway, I do want to mention that I have spoken about Lysandra Spooner on the show many times. I'm familiar with that. So if somebody does go and say, "Hey, Mark should really read it," I have. And it's actually there's a couple of people who actually use it as an insult that we're just Spooner. We just regurgitate everything Spooner says, which is kind of odd because one in particular, that's all they seem to do is regurgitate what somebody else says, and then they're going to use that as an insult. But it is anarchy, and by anarchy we mean no rulers. Not no rules, no rulers. We don't want a ruling class. We still want all the same. At least I do, and people I know, we want the services, most of the services, we just don't want it being done at the barrel of a gun. We don't want a ruling class to provide those services that they could be done. The community can provide the services. But I want to get back, and we will take your calls after real soon. But we're still talking with Kevin in Brisbane. So Kevin, where does this sit? Have you filed? You've got the speeding ticket. Have you filed the application to dismiss and the discovery request?
Well, that's what I was going to talk to you about. So I've received a letter because I've elected to go to court, and it's basically come back as they've received that election to go to court, and they'll send out another letter with the summons in it. So I haven't yet received a summons on it. So I'll have to get in and get those applications to dismiss or motions to dismiss and whatever else I need to. And that sort of brings us up another question. I want to a couple of quick questions regarding in America. With the charges, like jurisdiction is actually an element of the charge, whereas in, I think the code or regulations, it's not necessarily an element of the charge that they need to prove. So I was wondering, what is it within their legal process that you're actually challenging the jurisdiction of if it's not an element of the charge?
Well, here they're charging you with a code violation, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Well, in the United States, they only look at jurisdiction as the applicability of the laws. They're only looking at as far as if you were physically there. A lot of times they'll just say if you're physically here, then that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that there's jurisdiction. They don't typically consider the law itself an element of the crime. I do that because it's logical and because it is. Hopefully I'm explaining this right and I understand your question correctly. I asked that because it's a mala prohibita. It's only an offense because they made a rule about that. It's not wrong by its nature, like a real crime, like murder and rape, fraud, things like that, arson. Here, I would still, we've done that and we've had success raising that before in Australia. Even if it, but because there's no charge without it. So for them to have a valid cause of action and basically subject matter jurisdiction, they have to show that two things at minimum. They have to show that, the law was violated and that there's evidence to prove that. Well, to show that the law was violated, they absolutely have to show that the laws apply in the first place. Now, I get that in Australia, just like anywhere else, they want to skip step one. I get that. And I'm saying I'm going to object and I'm going to make it a point every step of the way that this is not going to be skipped. And if I have to, we'll put your witness on the stand, over my objection, of course. And then I'll get it out of him on cross-examination.
Yeah. And you also mentioned about your here as in like in the state, but also it's another thing I was going to talk about within court. They'll use that as in the jurisdiction you're here because, you're here in court. And I know you can use the gun in the room, but I've thought of a question to ask which can probably split the defense and the prosecution and the judge, rather than going down that, what you can still do, show the gun in the room, but ask, how is the court's jurisdiction of evidence of the prosecution's jurisdiction?
It was kind of a word salad there. That wasn't a very coherent question.
Well, they're saying that the court, you're here in the court because the court has jurisdiction. And if it's a supposed separation of powers, how is the court's jurisdiction evidence of the prosecution's jurisdiction? They should be two separate things. So if they come back and say it's the same jurisdiction, then you can get them on conflict of interest or ask if it's the same jurisdiction, can the prosecution judge this case, or can the judge act as a prosecution in this case? So that's the way it's sort of like splitting it down the middle and actually showing that there should be a separation of powers, even though they might not want to act that way, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, the conflict of interest is easier to show because they're all paid and working for the same organization. And I've explained before that it doesn't make any difference if like on a football team, you have a defensive line, you have an offensive line. They're not on the field at the same time. They're different, they're different parts of the same team, but they're still part of the same team. So that you have that there. As far as the jurisdiction, I guess technically there are 3 issues of jurisdiction that we're discussing. And the prosecutor bears the burden for all 3. Does the police agency have evidence of jurisdiction to issue the ticket against you in the first place? Does the prosecution have jurisdiction to prosecute? And has the prosecution submitted evidence that the court has jurisdiction to hear it against you?
Okay, yeah.
Now the fact that it may come from the same document, I guess I've not actually used that directly to show a conflict of interest. I've gone the simpler way of, I don't know if it's simpler, but I've gone the usual route of showing that the judge, according to the judge, when they're honest, is acting on behalf of the same entity or party as the prosecution. That's a usual.
Yeah, what the question just basically comes down to that you shouldn't give them an automatic pass by the fact that the court has jurisdiction. Just because you're there doesn't mean that the prosecution has jurisdiction. So it's sort of like you can try and get out of it that way. But I know what you're saying, but it's just like a question I had in my head that I thought about. So yeah.
Well, I guess if you're going through the Socratic method, it seems, I know we've done it many times in Australia and in England and in Canada and the US, that it's really focused and easy to show the conflict of interest by asking the judge, who they're acting on behalf of, as opposed to here you have to, well, the Crown prosecutor is acting pursuant, to an alleged jurisdiction pursuant to the Constitution. Aren't you acting under the same, and I just think it's easier, and especially for people who may be new to this, it's easier to just go through the standard questions that have proven to be very effective. Am I entitled to a fair hearing? Yes. Okay, great. Can I get a fair hearing if there's a conflict of interest? No, of course not, me. Well, who do you represent in these proceedings? And that brings out the conflict of interest pretty quickly and easily, and everyone can understand that if the judge turns around and says, well, I don't represent anybody, now you've got this issue where he's not acting pursuant to the Constitution. So we'll finish. We'll go one more segment. So I appreciate everyone's patience. We don't get many calls from Australia, so just hold tight. My name is Mark Stevens, listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. Now, if you're not subbed, get subbed. And for heaven's sakes, people, stop wasting your time on the chat. Let's just focus. If you're going to be in the chat here on YouTube, let me focus on, if you're going to be making comments, and maybe sometimes there are people that have questions they want to ask me for the air, and they're not going to get through, and I'm not going to see it because it's buried with all this crap trying to get an answer out of somebody who's clearly not going to answer your question. Just ignore someone who's not going to give you a straight answer. If they're not going to answer, or they're not going to give you a straight answer, they're not going to be responsive, put them on ignore and let it go. Stop wasting your time, and it's just stop wasting the time. It's just like when I see people on Facebook. I can't believe the time some people spend going to Facebook and actually doing the crap like you get on the YouTube chat. YouTube chat is usually really bad anyway. Don't make it worse by actually engaging people and constantly going over and over and over and over and over and over again when you're not going to get an answer. So just don't waste your time. But we will be back here in just a few minutes with Kevin from Brisbane. Yes, welcome back to the No Stay Project, and I will actually make a comment here that someone brought up the vegan death metal chef. Actually, a really entertaining, really entertaining YouTube channel. He's been on for years, and he's got a pretty good sized channel. He's got some good videos. So yeah, check out the vegan black metal or death metal chef. Always cool. So I haven't actually seen that in a long time. So I'm glad somebody brought it up. And Kevin, just bear with me for just a moment, mate. Someone is saying, is saying, Mark, what can you do at the stop, or do you wait for court? When you're at the stop, do the identification. It's under threat of arrest and coercion, and then keep your mouth shut. Do not answer any of the police officers' questions. Keep your mouth shut. Even if it means that you get arrested, keep your mouth shut. Anybody who knows anything about the legal profession or the legal system, anybody who knows anything about it, will always tell you, do not answer the police officer's questions. End of discussion. Who cares if you spend a night in jail? Don't open up your mouth on that traffic stop, or if the police approach you and start answering your questions. Say, on advice of counsel, I'm not answering questions. Well, why don't you answer questions? Keep your mouth shut. Yes, definitely wait for court to file your paperwork to challenge. Do not speak to this 5-year-old child with a gun, where we'll talk later about how another cop wound up going to the wrong apartment and killing somebody. At least they have a warrant for the cop's arrest for manslaughter. Because as a cop, remember, commit your murders on the clock. But anyway, I'm sorry, mate. So, we were talking about your speeding ticket. So you haven't actually gotten the paperwork back so that it's appropriate for you to file a motion to dismiss or an application to dismiss?
Yeah, I haven't got the actual summons to court yet, so they've only received the letter to say that they've received my election to go to court. So, So even when I get that, I might even ring them up, and I'm not sure what the process is, what you recommend, just to put in the paperwork or to actually ring the people who they're dealing with, whether it's going to be the same person. I'm not sure, or a different place to ask those sort of questions to try and to get out of it before it even goes to court or even put in the paperwork.
Well, you could put in, you could, I don't know, I guess if you can't really keep it in, maybe you could speak to someone at the at the prosecutor's office, the police prosecutor, and see, and stay more focused this time on, the issues we were talking about today, and see if you can get some admissions from them that you could then use in the motion to dismiss if they go ahead anyway. So, well, I do plan, of course, of filing an application to dismiss, and I will put in there that you don't have the evidence, but you're going to go ahead and do a summons anyway. So I'm going to make I'm going to argue bad faith.
So that was what I was trying to do with this conversation, but obviously it got to the stage where he was non-responsive and ended up hanging up. Yeah. But also, it's interesting, I was talking to the lower level bureaucrats before getting to that person. They even said that the camera made the determination that the laws apply. And I was thinking it was very interesting that, it would be interesting if you could subpoena the camera as a witness and ask them if they were qualified in the interpretation and applicability of the law.
Well, I have on my board, because I didn't want to forget it, because it turned out what I thought was at the time one of the top 3 stupidest things I've ever heard a bureaucrat say. And a police officer, it was reported firsthand knowledge on the show here, a police officer did say on the stand under oath that the radar gun determined that the laws applied. And that is just, I'm sure there'll be somebody that'll say, well, Marco, that's absolutely true. I spoke to every lawyer in my complex, and they agree that, that is monumentally stupid, because all you have to do is say, well, really? How so? How did the camera tell you that the laws apply to me? That is, That is stupidity that you would think that the worst of the trolls, the people who support the court system like people support Trump, that no matter what stupid thing comes out of their mouth, they'll formulate some stupid thing, justification. Well, I can't even, I have more than 2 functioning brain cells, so I can't even begin to try to spin how a camera can determine, that the laws apply. I'm sure maybe one of the trolls will turn around and say, well, what you should have done is object and say that only judges can determine the laws apply. I heard it on YouTube. Yeah. Only judges can make the determination if the laws apply. Outside of court? Really? Really? But yeah, see if depending on what day it is, that I'd be happy to join you on that call.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens. So yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Depending on the time zones and all that sort of stuff. So we're a fair few hours ahead, obviously. So
yeah, well, it's usually fairly easy for Australia. I mean, it's only you're a day ahead, but like 4 hours earlier, so it's not a big deal. It really is tough, and I haven't done it in a while, but it really is difficult to do it when I'm speaking with someone in Europe. I gotta make calls at like 5 a.m. my time, and it's tough to keep my cherub-like demeanor dealing with these terrible people when it's 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. But with you, that's pretty easy. I've done quite a bit in Australia, and it's usually not a problem. So we'll talk about that off air, and we'll get something worked out. But the way it goes in Australia, for those who are new, it all hinges on the same, and I go through this in Government Indicted, the book. It all hinges on the same claim. If you're physically in Australia, then the laws apply. And if there was evidence to prove that, they would just present it. They wouldn't be, screaming philosophy or stuff like that. They wouldn't be saying, well, only judges can do that and stupid things like that. They would just present the evidence. The reason why your physical location proves that the laws apply is this. All that they can say is repeat the claim over and over and over again. It's a classic example of a proof by assertion fallacy. Well, if we just keep saying it, it will be true. And that includes, of course, Kevin, by saying that other people said it. Well, I spoke to a lawyer at work and he agreed. Or a judge in 1965 said this, so it must be true. No. There's got to be an explanation why your physical location proves the Constitution. A mere written instrument applies to you. And they don't have it. And that's where we got to keep our focus, because everything flows from that. Even in Australia, I'm sure that they have, I'm pretty certain of this, relevance is just as important and a guiding factor in a court proceeding as it is in England or Canada or the United States. So that's why, if you have to go to trial for this, relevance is a big objection that you'll be making.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions? Oh, well, we're actually at the end of the segment, but we got a lot covered here. We're actually at the halfway point of the show, but I do appreciate the call, mate, and we'll talk about me helping doing a call off air. So we'll talk to you soon. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And that's why, for those on watching that stream, we're on a break right now, so I will not be speaking. You guys just don't, I guess you can't, you just can't, you just don't get it. All right. Well, all right. Well, someone's saying, Mark, sorry to bother you again, Stuart, but what is your favorite thing to eat? Jeez. It used to be pizza, but I guess I still like I make my own pizza, and if you get the So Delicious mozzarella, oh, that's good. That's good. You know, I'm getting a little tired of, you know what? It's, you guys just, but one of the best, So Delicious makes a decent mozzarella. You got to cook it just right. It certainly helps if you make your own dough. And I make my own dough. You have to turn to my Sicilian card if I ever used a roller. So it's bad enough if if you don't make your own dough, but if you make it and use a roller, yeah, that's bad. That's bad. And, but and the reason why you want to not use a roller is because when you actually work the dough, when you spin it, it's that spinning force, that is what is creating the crust on the outside. So when you just use a roller, I don't think it activates it continues the activation of the yeast. So it's not, it just comes out more crunchy. But when you spin it, it'll rise a little bit more. And of course, the more it rises, the more flavor it's got. And here's the thing about it. I learned this a while back. I have like a 65, 70-year-old, cast iron skillet. I guess is it a 12? Maybe it's, okay. But, what you want to do is you want to make the pizza, once you do your magic there, okay, you want to use a cast iron skillet, the oven at least 450 degrees. And lightly oil, you can use they have a coconut oil you can spray that won't go on fire like typical coconut oil will at 450 degrees. And what you do is, as you're getting your dough ready and you're kneading it and whatnot, you want to preheat the iron skillet, the cast iron skillet. Preheat that baby. There's a reason for this, especially when you're using a non-dairy cheese. Because once you put the dough in, the dough starts to cook. Because the dough and the cheese not always cooking at the same time. Very important. So as it's in there and you can shape it a little better, just be a little bit careful. But you then put your toppings and everything on it. And if you got at least 450 degrees, 12 minutes, you're doing good. You're doing good. It's pretty good. So, that's one of my favorite things. And that's the thing with bread. If you want to cook it, and you don't have a really expensive oven, it does help if and I've done this, and I saw someone mention this, you can put a top, put it in a pot and put it in, a top on it. And so that keeps a lot of the moisture in there, which is, what you want when you're cooking bread. Usually. Welcome back. We're actually back here live on the big broadcast, and I gotta apologize, because I had, a best mate on from Australia. I did not connect my call line, so I do apologize. So I'm gonna have to go with, you're stuck with just me for a segment, so I want to get to what I was mentioning earlier. I think this is there's a lot going on here. And, it's really, I guess because this police officer, and they're not releasing the name. Imagine that if you walked in and you shot somebody in their apartment saying that you thought it was yours, your name would be on the news. So we've got a little bit of so if you want to talk about privilege, being one of the king's men, definitely privileged. They're not releasing the name, but there is supposedly a warrant out for this police officer's arrest. So off duty, entered the wrong apartment in her building, killed the guy that was in. Now it comes out later that she knows the guy. She knows him. So his name is Botham Shem Jean, 26-year-old native of the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. Wow. So they said that Police Chief Renee Hall said a blood sample was drawn at her request to test the officer's drug and alcohol levels, and we are in the process of obtaining a warrant based on the circumstances. Why was she able to leave the scene? Again, privilege. You don't need a warrant. You're at the scene. Take her into custody now. She wasn't on the job. The union's got nothing to do with it. Well, I'm guessing there. Investigators are working as vigorously and meticulously as we can to ensure the integrity of this case and ensure the integrity of the department is upheld. Everyone pays for your support on the threat of jail or death. So yeah, where's the integrity to begin with? The officer was off duty at the time of the shooting, and Hall said her name would be released if she is officially charged. Further details surrounding the death of Botham Shem Jean were not immediately provided. Hall did not say why the officer opened fire and declined to discuss what she may have been doing before she returned home after working a full shift Thursday. Now, other details, not in this particular news segment or story, is that she couldn't use, her key wouldn't work, her key wouldn't go in the lock. So, as any reasonable person would do, you start banging on the door, screaming, "Open up." That's what was reported. Open up. Open up. How? Now, I used to live in an apartment. In fact, you know, I've been known to go and visit people at apartments. And one of the consistent features for most apartments is a number of that apartment. It's pretty obvious. People notice these things. In the first season of Friends, the numbers are different on the apartment. How do you notice certain things like that? Because you notice them. You notice the big freaking number that's on the door. Oh, that wasn't enough for this cop. Oh, because cops can't be wrong. Cops, lawyers, judges, the government, they can't be wrong. They're never wrong. No matter what the facts are. The fact that they will, that all the support is coerced. You'll still have apologists saying, well, you consented. You consented. It doesn't matter if you're forced to pay. It's consent. It doesn't matter that she thought she was, that she was at the wrong apartment. She thought she was at the right one. That's the only thing that matters. What the government says. Just spin it any way you want. However you need to spin it. She was at the wrong apartment, didn't realize it. No, I think she did. How could you not know? How can an adult who's given a gun not know they're at the wrong apartment? Look at the number. It's right in front of you. They don't put it, to the side. It's right on the middle of the friggin' door. But you'll get some copsuckers. Some copsucker they'll defend it. They'll defend it. They'll go into this guy. Oh, he's a black guy. We gotta have something on him. Oh, he had a jaywalking ticket 5 years ago. Thug. He deserved it. You'll get your Trump supporters. You'll get your cop suckers who can't see that the cops do anything wrong, even off duty. Sickening. Sickening. Facts don't mean anything anymore. Words don't mean anything. In the legal profession, just equivocate till you get what you want. Advice doesn't mean suggestion. No, it just means asking a question. It means whatever the hell you want. And I'm not talking just about words of art. I'm talking about lawyers and judges and prosecutors or whatnot and internet trolls. I've got a narrative and I'm going to define the word however I want it to be. So here, at least, they had the decency. I guess the only reason why they're doing anything is because the cop was off duty. That's why I said, you're going to kill somebody as a cop, make sure you're doing it on the clock. Because then, you don't even have to talk to the police after the incident. You're allowed to go home. you're allowed to have a day or so before you actually go for an interview. Doesn't happen to us. Doesn't happen to us. Privilege. See, this is a matter of I had this discussion with EO on Skype, because they were able to convince people, otherwise seemingly smart people, that they have a moral right to do what is immoral. Of course you're going to get equivocation. Of course you're going to get them redefining the word. Well, so asking for evidence is now asking for legal advice. So if a police officer stops you and says license or registration, whoa, I can't give you legal advice, sir. I'm asking for your license and registration, you lunatic. Can't give you legal advice. Can't help you. Do you have a license or registration? Well, that's a hypothetical. Can't answer the question. You see how far you get with that. This is just, we'll see. We'll see what happens. The mother wants to forgive the cop for killing her son. She just wants to, before she's able to do that, she's saying she wants to know why. She walked into the wrong apartment. She's claiming she didn't know. My gosh, that's like box cutters taking over, an airplane. You believe that story? Does anyone think for a second that that if you killed somebody, that you could actually say to the police, I'm innocent. Dude, I thought that was my apartment. Did your key go in? No. Did you notice the number? No. You were honestly, come on. The only way a cop would accept a story like that is if it came from another cop. Ridiculous. It's insane. It's insane. Someone's asking, what is legal advice? Legal advice is really synonymous with the word. I've even done a video where I posted the actual definition of this. Asking for evidence, or asking for what is actually physically in a file at court, is not asking for legal advice. Asking them what you should do about that evidence, asking what, could you suggest, well, Mr. Judge, can you suggest what I should do with this evidence? That's asking for legal advice. But asking if there's evidence in the file, that's not asking for legal advice. And all that is equivocation to further a narrative that is demonstrably false. All right, I will connect to the caller line, and then we'll start getting to our calls. So if you want to join me, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and also streaming live on my YouTube channel. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Say it again. You should just use the ignore. Let's stick to actual facts and issues and real questions instead of going on and on and on. But it is YouTube, so, you guys have at it. I want to get to the calls. I know everyone's been very patient. Hopefully, I know this didn't work out well the last time, so we're going to try this again. We've got Kerry from New Mexico. Welcome back to the show. Okay, we're not getting any audio from Kerry again. I don't know what... We got Kerry?
Hello?
Yes, Kerry, there he is. All right, we got you. Welcome back.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I know it didn't work out for whatever reason last time, but glad we were able to connect this time.
Well, I'm very confused. I've dialed into your show, and I just 2 minutes ago got through. Did your show just start, or has it been going for several hours?
We're more than halfway done with the show. It's just I didn't connect to the caller line because I had someone on Skype, and I didn't need to connect to the caller line yet. So and then I forgot to do that on another break, and we're here now.
So for that reason, when I call that phone number, I just now got connected, and I did it last week. I never got connected, and then this week, this is the first time, and I've kind of been needing to listen to your show. Okay. So I wish I could figure this thing out and correct it.
Well, we're here now, so what do you got for us today?
Yeah. Well, several weeks ago, you were talking to a caller, and you were telling the caller what you would do if you were in court. And obviously, I got to go to court on the 25th for a trial. And basically, I don't want to sit there and plead their case or talk their case, but I would certainly like to entertain listening to what you were saying if you were in court as to how you would question the prosecutor, because I think that's what you were talking about several weeks ago. And I'll tell you, if I had had a dang pen in my hand, I've been writing down some stuff, and I do have a pen this week or last week and this week. It's just that, one of the things is that basically they're dragging me into court. I've been drugged into court at least 50, 60, 70 times in the last 10 years of my life. And it's basically because they don't like me. It's not because I've done anything wrong per se. It's just that they don't like me, and they're using the system to punish me.
Well, that may be true. I mean, especially in smaller areas, that is known to happen. And we do know. I remember that there is one of the individuals who's harassing you has has a friend or a son in the police department or the sheriff's department. So that's never going to be good. But let's focus on what we need to do to help you be more effective on the 25th.
Yes, sir.
So, have you done any kind of role? I know the technology, but still, you Skype. Have you been prepping? Have you been going over the motions to dismiss and the issues and how to effectively cross-examine someone?
No, I hadn't. And you're saying that if I go onto your Skype thing, where would I look into Skype on that?
Well, this is for everybody who wants to do that. You contact me first on Skype at Frank Rizzo 3. It's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. All right. It is a Jerky Boys reference, so that should be easy for people to remember. It was either go with Frank Rizzo or Brett Weir, and I chose Frank Rizzo.
Okay, if you look at your Frank Rizzo Skype deal, I sent you a deal where I wasn't getting your show today, so if you answer that and remember that I called you today, maybe you could help me a little bit to get to the right place.
I don't have, well,
I just sent it maybe 15, 20 minutes ago to your Frank Rizzo line.
Yeah. Not seeing it, so. Do it again after the show. I don't want to burn up time on the show with that.
Sure.
But you definitely need to do that. And regardless of what, look, we go based on the evidence here and let the evidence speak for itself. You're not going to see me say, well, so-and-so is right. Listen, we go by the evidence. And the evidence shows we have had a lot of success getting tickets thrown out. And the role-playing helps. Yes, most of the tickets are thrown out without ever having to do a cross-examination. Yeah. But we're still speaking with the prosecutor. And we're going to handle the prosecutor in the same way. He's making the same false claims as the police officer. And that's why I say in government indicted, when you're speaking with the prosecutor or you're speaking to the judge or you're speaking in or out of court, treat it as a cross-examination. Everything they say is a lie, and you're going to ask leading questions to bring out those contradictions. So the role-playing does help. Role-playing helps sharpen your BS meter so you can quickly discern whether somebody is BSing you or not and ask them some really good effective questions so that you have what happened, like you get the same stupid, like what Kevin in Brisbane got. Well, they can't produce the evidence and support their claims, so they'll say, well, you're arguing philosophy. You're arguing philosophy. About phone. Come on. So that's why we do the role playing. It's so that in or out of court, you are better at calling people out on their BS and getting them to, contradict themselves or at least tell the truth and be honest, like Robert Diab did, the law professor up in British Columbia, that jurisdiction, no, the laws don't apply out of evidence. It's a blunt assertion of power by, neither argument nor evidence. That says it all right there. But there's still going to be people who are going to suck up to the system and say, no, the system is perfectly legitimate and valid. It's okay for them to lie, steal, kill, and cheat people because they're the government. They're special. So I'm going on, but you need to do that. So contact me off air, or I think you're trying to contact. That was odd.
Right. Well, I'm still here.
Yeah. All right. Now I see it just came up. Okay. So I've got your thing there. I will. I'll take care of it off air, and you can do that. Let the guys know. Hey, I'm Kerry. I've been on the show a bunch of times. I need real work. But you got to listen to the guys. I want to say to you and everybody else who's new to this, I went through and we helped someone do role playing the other day. We're going to be doing that. I think every Thursday I will be doing an hour with the role playing, either participating or just critiquing. And you got to listen. So I'm going to post a video of Irving Younger's top 10 commandments for cross-examination. It's a great video. He's entertaining. He was a former judge and taught at the Hastings Law School of Law. And one of his commandments for cross-examination is really one of the 10 commandments for for going to court, not just cross. And that is listen to the answer. And so that's a big thing. Listen to the guys, take their suggestions. Don't be offended if they correct you, and put the work in. Okay.
Yes.
And so so they always do at least some role playing after the show. So I will take care of make sure that you're in there and they can give you a hand. Even if you don't participate, at least you can listen and you can text questions. So like, hey, why did he do that, or why is that? Okay.
Well, what time on Thursdays are mountains? I guess you're in Mountain Standard Time.
It'll be 3 at the same time as the show comes on, 3:00 Mountain Time. And so the show is on Wednesday at 3:00. That's here on YouTube. The role playing is not going to be on YouTube. I may post it after, but I'm probably not going to do a live broadcast like this. And then so after every broadcast, we're going to have the guys do it. I will be doing sometimes on Wednesday after the broadcast, and I will be doing Thursday, a standalone, no broadcast, role playing.
Sounds good.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah, my life is very busy in the court system, no doubt.
I've said this before, probably a year ago. You are probably going to have to wind up moving. And I know it's uprooting your whole business and your life, but it may be the only way to get to physically move out of the way of these people so that they can't attack you like this anymore. I appreciate the call, and we'll talk more off air. We're at the top of the hour break, so I got to mute you up and let you go. I do appreciate the call. Again, we've got to work. Going to court is not a picnic. It's not something you should take lightly. I know I'll be mocked for that too. But we should be prepared to go to court and have our notes and whatnot, and definitely do the role playing and understand the basic principles. So we'll be back in the next hour for the third and final hour of Anarchy Radio right here on LRN.FM, and of course streaming on my YouTube channel. So that's why we're going to have nothing but silence for a bit. Yes, welcome back. You're listening to the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and of course streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. We are live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona for September 8th, 2018. Glad to be with you here. I do want to get to the calls. We got a lot of calls to get through, so that'll take us through this hour. We will be role-playing after the show, so if you'd like to do that, whether you're in court or just want to learn how to argue better, contact me at Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype, and we will get you in there. But we say anarchy is an absence of rulers, not an absence of rules. And at least in what I would like to see is that everyone is subject to the same moral principles. Do no harm. Live honestly, injure no one, give every man his due. Very, very easy to understand. You don't need some lawyer to have to explain that to you. Lawyers not necessary. And it's just because we have a violent ruling class now. I know there's some that want to disregard the evidence. I get it. I know. We're all adults, so most of us, we know that people are going to disagree with us. We accept that. But the fact is that all their support is compulsory. You either pay or you go to jail. And, we want all the rules to apply. We want the services, most of them anyway. We just don't need or want a violent criminal ruling class to provide them. That's it. We just want to change the manner in which they're provided, which brings a lot of things crashing in, because the violence is what supports the ruling class. Now, there are, and I'm quoting Malcolm X here, there are house Negroes and there are field Negroes. Me and you, most of us, we are field Negroes. But then there are some that are like, that lawyers, for example, are house Negroes. And their job is to make the system look good. It's to gaslight you into doing like what Trump said. What you are seeing and what you are reading and what you are hearing is not the truth. Only I have the truth. They're not really a criminal organization. They're not really forcing you to pay them. They're not really doing all these things. Anyway, let me get to the calls because we have all new callers waiting. And I appreciate the patience. We have area code 573. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Tom's File, Lake of the Ozarks, Central Missouri.
Wow. I missed your name though, sir.
My name is Tom.
Tom from the Ozarks. Well, welcome to the show,
yeah.
Tom.
Well, thank you. It's quite an honor to speak with you. I've just recently started following you because I think I got myself handed to the judge on a silver platter by my own attorney.
Oh, are you trying to tell me that a lawyer, somebody who people, the majestic among us, you really want me to believe that a lawyer did you wrong?
Oh, yeah, I do. It's pretty ironic though, because, I asked her, I said, let's go to trial because there's no evidence. I said, there's no evidence against me. I got pulled over for DWI. The problem was that they drew my blood without a warrant. The cop lied on his police report. I was actually diagnosed as being diabetic, 4 months prior to, and I wasn't on my insulin. I didn't understand it. I didn't have a good deal. I just got done working 15 and a half hours and went home and had a tail light out. Well, I got pulled over. And then he says, oh, you've been drinking. I go, no, I haven't. And I was acting funny because of the sugar level in my body.
Oh.
And I told that to my attorney at the time, and she never even admitted that before the charges were made. She never did any of that. I also broke down everything on the police report and said that this was a lie. This was a lie. I've countered everything. Oh, so just briefly, and they drew my blood without a warrant, and I was below the legal limit, and they still coerced me into pleading guilty to a misdemeanor DWI.
How do they? Well, all right, one thing at a time. I think on a traffic stop, I mean, do they need a warrant? I think they have the probable cause if they've done certain tests, and I'm not completely sure if in the Ozarks they actually need a warrant if they have probable cause there at the stop.
Mm-hmm.
But again, well, what I'm also interested in here is how do they coerce you into pleading guilty?
Well, my attorney juggled it around for almost a year. You got to do this with the Department of Revenue because you get charges from the Department of Revenue, and then you get the criminal charges in the county, which is known for being corrupt. And they're currently under an FBI investigation, or at least were a year and a half to 2 years ago, because of whatever's going on inside that courthouse. Anyway, I understand everybody is making a living stepping all over all of us, and I'm tired of it. I'm usually a pretty nice guy. I'm honest. I'm hardworking, but I'm fed up. And I think I was brought to you, or you were brought to me somehow, so I can start making a difference for myself and for all of my friends and family. The warrant, he took me from my house, pulled up in front of my house. The police officer took me down to jail, booked me in, and my attorney at the time, because I had to switch attorneys because he didn't really help. But anyway, he says, whatever you do, don't admit to anything. Don't sign anything. Don't do any of the stupid human tricks. Just don't do anything. And ironically, I was in a holding cell for 3 hours before they took me to the hospital, where this cop was doing 95 miles an hour and didn't have a care for anybody. It's at midnight.
Okay, but let's get to the how exactly did they coerce you into entering a plea of guilty?
Well, when the sentencing came about, my attorney I was at her office the very day before, and I asked her, okay, so if I plead guilty to this misdemeanor charge for DUI, then that's it. Is that accurate? I mean, that's it. She looks at me right in the eyes and she goes, yeah, that's it. There was no conversation about probation, which she appeared. I had to go to court the very next day, and she sat right next to me with a piece of paper and said, sign this. And I go, well, what's this? She goes, well, it's 2 years probation. It's standard. And I'm like going, well, Barb, I was just in your office. I just was in your office yesterday, and you didn't ever say anything about probation.
Well,
you never said anything about.
And that may have been after the fact. She may not have, that may have been something the judge actually did. It wasn't at the because that was the deal. I don't know, but so she certainly may have misled you. But as far as coercion, you were certainly misled. If she was saying that you're going to go to prison if you don't do this, then certainly it rises to the level of, coercion, I believe. But, why was she not willing to, at least during pretrial and go through the pretrial process and bring out that you weren't drunk, that you were actually a diabetic?
Because she didn't. And I don't know why. I presented everything. I gave her evidence of 8 out of 10 symptoms of what happens when your sugar levels are crazy and how your brain is acting. And you actually show symptoms when your sugar levels are off, like you're drunk. Your eyes are even glazed over. You have the tremors and the shakes, and you can't, you slur your speech.
All right. Well, Tom, just hold on a second. We're up against the break. We're up against a break here at the No Stay Project. I'm not going to give out the call the number because we have I have a full boat of calls. So, and only 3 more segments left. So, we'll be back here with, Tom, who's in the Ozarks, in just a few moments. So don't go anywhere, you. Welcome back to the No Stay Project here on the Liberty Radio Network. I'm also streaming live on my YouTube channel, where you can join us on the chat at your own risk. But it's YouTube, and so we actually have a pretty good ratio of trolls to serious comment posters, so not too bad. But I want to get back to Tom in the Ozarks. All right, Tom. So, but you presented this information to her directly, and she didn't present it. Did you ask her directly, since you're paying her money, why didn't you raise these issues? Why didn't you present this evidence?
I did on numerous meetings, and it just didn't. It went in one ear and out the other.
So you asked her a question, and she ignored you, and you didn't press her for an answer?
Yes, because I'm not used to getting in trouble like this. I don't know how to handle myself. And normally I'm a pretty good talker, but I get flabbergasted when legal terms and procedure and process and all that stuff. It kind of just overwhelms me a little bit. But she, at one time, I had asked her about let's go to trial. She had said, if we go to trial, I am going to withdraw as your attorney and I go, well, why would you do that? She says, because quite frankly, I couldn't stand seeing you going up on the stage or on the stand. I couldn't bear to see you get handcuffed and put in jail for a year. And, okay. So I got that.
So even though you have evidence showing that you're diabetic, you weren't drunk, which you're not being charged with being a diabetic, you're being charged with being drunk. So even though there was solid evidence to show that they don't have a case against you, she was absolutely certain that no matter how good of a lawyer she is, she couldn't get an acquittal.
Yes.
Wow.
And then it just worked there. She ended up telling everybody and filing that she was planning on withdrawing last month during my court date. On the date, which was about 3 weeks, because of the discrepancy, and I questioned her. I said, well, I need to find some other legal counsel because this ain't working. And so she filled out all the paperwork to go ahead and file that she was going to withdraw as my attorney on the scheduled date, which didn't allow me to hire another attorney because she was still active. So 3 weeks went by. I didn't have any chance. I called around for all these attorneys. They knew of her and wouldn't even accept to even talk with me. They wouldn't even return phone calls. They wouldn't, whatever it is.
Wow. Aren't lawyers just, lawyers are they're misaligned. I mean, people have the wrong view of lawyers. Lawyers, they're good, honest people. They only have your back. And they're and they're so smart. Oh, they're so smart. Yeah, I'm sorry to, so where are you sitting with this now? Because I have to move kind of quick because.
Well, I had to, after last, I hired an attorney, a local reputable one.
Oh, yeah.
The prestige and, I'm the best DWI attorney in the county type thing. And, but anyway, so I've got court, next Thursday for DOR charges. Okay. So what happened there was they hooked me up on this blow tube thing after the charges went. 5 seconds later, after she made me sign that paperwork, the last time I went to court, went right in front of the judge and handed it to him. I scribbled my name on there all nervous, like, well, what am I getting into? I don't even, 2 years probation. I don't agree with this. And then I'm thinking, well, she was gonna withdraw as my attorney if we went to trial. So I was kind of felt like I was trapped.
Yeah, I can see that.
So now the points get assessed to my record for the misdemeanor DWI, guilty plea. And then the DOR comes back to me, and wants to change out they put me on a deal, with the DOR dropped all their original charges, and just made me get on a breath or an intoxalock, tube thing that, is plugged into the car and, is,
yeah. So does that, will that give you a diabetic reading?
No.
Yeah.
It
was a lame attempt at a joke. So, all right. Oh. Well,
no.
Hey, it took a while, but that one landed. So, all right. Well, yeah. I don't have too much time. So I guess what you can do here is you can file to throw out the guilty plea on grounds of ineffective counsel and coercion. That you felt you had no other choice. You're not a lawyer. You don't know the process that well. All you know is that your lawyer's telling me you're screwed, that this is the only option you have, even though you've got evidence that you're diabetic. And then I want to throw this out. She is absolutely dead wrong that you would have to go on the stand. You're diabetic. All you'd have to do is present medical documents. Mm-hmm. You don't have to get on the stand to do that. You could admit the documents, and then your attorney can argue on, once the documents, after they're admitted and shown to be relevant evidence, then she can argue in a closing statement that well, actually, it could be brought up on cross-examination also. Did you know that my client, and all that. So I would, you can move to get that thrown out on ineffective counsel. So, that's what I would do.
Okay.
I don't know if this other lawyer's willing to help with something like that, but, it's worth asking since he's such a reputable guy. Maybe he's willing to see and look and say, oh, wow, she really exercised at least some undue influence on you to convince you that despite the evidence, it was absolutely certain you were going to be convicted. This is, wow. Yeah. All right. Well, look, that's the best I can do today. Let me know what the attorney says about that.
Well, I will. And, hopefully, what would be a second opinion? I've never filed anything with the courts or I've never done any of that. I don't know. I don't want to screw it up, but, I've been doing some research and taking notes out of Black's Law Dictionary and, listening to your show and highlighting some of the key words. So I'm kind of getting familiar with the terms, but the procedure is whacked out. Should I go to the local county website and try and understand that, or what do you think?
Well, look at the rules of evidence for one. Start looking at the rules of evidence and go through that. You can also, there's some really good videos. There was a federal judge who did a 2-hour seminar for newly appointed judges on just the rules of evidence, and it's really good. So you can do a YouTube search and find that out. So, and if you have any other questions, you're welcome to email me, and you're always welcome to call the show again. I do appreciate the call. I got to let you go. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. I'm going to say this one time, Justin. You don't stop with the inflammatory statements against another YouTube poster here, and I don't give a damn who it is. I'm going to block you, not them. So, and I'll put that in the chat, but we'll be back in just a moment. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. And streaming live on my YouTube channel. And what I want to just say, just for everybody, everything that you say or is going to be turned around and made to me look bad. Now, I know that nobody here represents me and no one's acting on my behalf, but when we're doing the show, I'm doing my broadcast here. If you're not being professional and it's going to be used to make it look like I'm like that, and I don't want to be associated with that. So let's keep it professional. You're all being trolled. Okay? You need to stop, but I can say that the entire show, you're all going to just keep engaging, trolls. So, it really is unfortunate, but I got to get back to the calls. We have area code 812. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
That's you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
All right. My name's Matt. I'm from Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, yeah, I've actually been there. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Matt.
Matt from Evansville. Didn't they have a problem with sewers flooding there pretty bad?
From time to time, yeah.
All right, what do you got for us today?
All right, well, I have several different cases going on. Main one, I've had a driving with no license issue down just south of me in Henderson, Kentucky, that I've already submitted a motion to dismiss for, and they're pretty much just denying my motion to dismiss, but not giving me any reason why. And the last time I went to court, I have court again Monday, and that's to go back with a decision on what I want to do out of the 3 options he gave me, which was either A, plead guilty, which obviously I'm not going to do, or B, I can take a conditional guilty plea and then bypass my right to a trial by jury and just kick it up to appellate courts and wait for their decision to come back. And then 3, I can go to trial. But wouldn't it be defeating the purpose if they haven't even answered the jurisdictional issues yet?
Well,
they go to trial.
They didn't directly address it other than they denied it. They denied it without explanation. So you certainly could file to have that reconsidered based on the evidence, the facts that one, you don't have any explanation whatsoever. And the motion to dismiss is based on lack of evidence, if you use mine, lack of evidence proving jurisdiction, personal subject matter jurisdiction. So,
right.
To just say denied doesn't actually really address the motion. So
Right.
you can file the
They haven't answered it at all. And they've had 3 months well over 3 months to review this motion to dismiss, and I don't even think they've read it.
Okay, well, all right. Well, did they just not did the judge formally deny the motion to dismiss?
Yeah, he said I'm not gonna grant your motion to dismiss. He said, but then he went into the 3 options that I had. And didn't state why. And I told him I needed time to think about it so I could, kind of go through things in my brain on what I can do here from this point, because I don't think there's any possibility of proceeding further until they actually answered the motion. Am I correct in that?
They have answered it. They denied it. They haven't actually addressed the merits and actually produced and show and cited in the record the evidence that shows that you're wrong. So if we bring a motion to dismiss saying that they don't have the evidence, and they have to show where, no, you're wrong, sir. It's right here. That's how you legitimately and consistent with due process deny a motion. No, sir, you're wrong. It's not a frivolous, but you had the facts wrong. So the facts are they haven't done it. So what I would do, this is Monday. You need to be role playing after the show. Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype. So what I would do here is I would file to reconsider. I would, right there when he asks, because you're going to have to file it when you walk in, and I would say, I want to have my motion reheard because it looks like you did it arbitrarily because it's based on a lack of evidence, but you're not citing any evidence to overcome the motion. Now, if he tells you Abba Fongul, then I would move in, well, I intend on pleading guilty. Has the prosecution met their burden of proof? Are there facts proving that the laws apply because I'm physically in Indiana, or Kentucky rather, and given the court jurisdiction?
Right. Yeah, I submitted the motion to dismiss, and I know you got a thing with the right to travel. But in the motion to dismiss, I submitted one of the Supreme Court rulings was Shapiro versus Thompson, 1959, of the right to freely travel unencumbered.
Matt?
And he asked me to bring back Supreme Court ruling stating that because they tried to tell me that was just talking about walking, and it doesn't specifically state that, so they can't make that assertion that it was just about walking. So he tells me to bring back any rulings that specifically state automobile. So I brought him back several. And he still just looked at it and said, okay, well, I'm not going to grant your motion to dismiss.
Did you do my motion to dismiss, or did you do the right to travel stuff?
No, I wasn't able to get a hold of it. I wasn't able to get a hold of it before I submitted. The one I did do was partial from a PDF file I found on Carl Miller. You know Carl Miller?
Oh. All right, so you can actually get my motion to dismiss and submit it on Monday and argue that. Oh, no wonder.
Okay.
No wonder. All right. So get to doing the role playing today to prep so you can do that, because if they run over the motion to dismiss, which is very likely, then you still want to put the brakes on and say, well, I intend on pleading guilty. Does the prosecution is there evidence proving that the court has jurisdiction over me? I'll plead guilty right now if there's such evidence.
Right.
So that,
I've got some of that stuff. Some of that stuff that I've taken from. Well, I've gotten other jurisdictional Supreme Court rulings in there based on jurisdiction that once it's challenged, it must be proven, and they're just steamrolling right over that too.
Well, sure, I mean, you have to make it a factual issue. You have to say where's the evidence, and even the courts have been fairly clear there has to be evidence. That's why sometimes they'll lie to you and say, well, sir, jurisdiction's a trial issue. No, it's not a trial issue only, you jackass. You black robe lying scumbag, you.
Like I've got other court cases too, like one in Newburgh, Indiana, here in Evansville, that I've even raised the jurisdiction issue and brought forth a Supreme Court case ruling that says that the jurisdiction can be challenged at any time throughout the proceedings.
Yeah.
At any time, and it must be met once it's challenged, or else the court can proceed no further. And that is strictly stating straight from the Supreme Court ruling. And then I've also got another one in there that states that the court has no jurisdiction to determine its own jurisdiction, and that's exactly what they did to me in Warwick County.
Well, there has to be.
The court has jurisdiction. The court has jurisdiction.
Right. And that's why when we go through the role playing, when they say the court has jurisdiction, we say objection. Is that because you say so or because the prosecution's evidence does? And that, hey, it's not a false choice. That's the only options you have there. It's just like with gender. You have male and you have female, so definitely, I don't have much time. I'm trying to get to as many callers as possible, but, right. What I will tell you, stop the right to travel stuff because you will absolutely, on no uncertain terms, you will absolutely never win at trial level or at the appellate level on a pure issue of law such as legal interpretation. The cases that say about the ordinary use of the roads have all been overturned. They were all overturned because the legislatures all went and changed the law to make it a taxable privilege. And all those Supreme Court cases that say that a state cannot license a right and tax it as a privilege, they're talking about federal right to travel. They're not talking about the state right to travel, which is what is involved with the driver's license. So you will always lose on legal interpretation, even if your legal interpretation is plausible and even obvious. They have conflicting decisions. They don't give a damn. You will lose. So I would say definitely stop the right to travel stuff. So definitely get with me off air at Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype, and we can get you through into the role-playing session. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. We're getting into the last segment of the big show today. So I'll do my best to go maybe a little bit over. Looks like I got a Canadian call, which is cool. So we'll be back in just a moment. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to blow through the commercial. I'm going to take the caller now. Looks like we've got area code 760. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, John Bolton.
Oh, John. All right, you guys. I need you to turn off the feed behind you.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, I talked to you a couple of weeks ago. I told you I was going to court.
Yeah.
You told me that I needed to learn about the computers and stuff.
Well, I mentioned you need to get on Skype and work with the guys doing role-playing.
Yeah, I just thought I'd call you and let you know what happened. Yeah, I talked it over with some friends and stuff. And so I went ahead and I paid that ticket. I just, I said, okay, I need to get onto this computer because I really don't have any computer skills. And I've been watching your program and looking at all your stuff and everything. And so that's what I'm going to do. I hate to give them the money, but, yeah, I just thought I'd call you and let you know that, this is John Bolton and I'm going to take your advice. And I've got a guy coming in and he's showing me about how to do the, emails and all this stuff and how to locate this stuff and get it off there. And I figure in about 2 months I should be set up pretty good. So I just wanted to call you and let you know what's happening, and thank you, and goodbye.
All right, appreciate the call. Thanks, John. And we don't have to necessarily give last names on the air, but yeah, John Bolton. Yeah, you don't forget a name like that when somebody calls with a name like John Bolton. Considering that the warmongering, I don't remember what he has now as far as anyway, warmongering bureaucrat. So we have a Canadian call, area code 604. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello?
Yes, area code 604. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mark. It's my name's Mac. I'm calling from the Vancouver area, British Columbia.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. What can I do for you today?
You mentioned something about a law professor in British Columbia. I didn't catch the full thing there. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. His name is Robert Diab, and he's a law professor. I don't remember the name of the school, but if you go to markstevens.net and you do a search, you'll get the article and the video that I have with the interview with him.
Oh, okay. And he's talking about how bad the legal system is, or what was?
No, I don't think he was a nice guy. It was was a good conversation. It's actually evidence that I can show that when people are respectful and treat me the way they want to be treated, we can have a professional discussion on that. and actually, have, a legitimate, discussion, unlike some other lawyers that I've spoken with that never shut up and talk over you. So, I'm glad to have that, but he was honest in that he said that the laws don't apply because of any evidence or any logical argument. They apply because it's a blunt assertion of power by men and women called government, which was
perfect,
which was great. And and I want to be respectful of his time. And it went on for a while. He was not always brief. Let's say that. And so I wanted to be able to get into and ask him. So if it's just a blunt assertion of power, it would be considered an immoral and unethical organization the way they operate, and that it would be morally justified that if someone did make that blunt assertion of power, whether at my home or on the street, to use defensive force to stop that. But alas, I was not able to. But yeah, it was great to finally hear a lawyer who I could have a professional conversation with. It's a very, very rare thing. And they honestly admit that the laws don't apply because of actual evidence. It's a blunt assertion of power.
Okay. So, I guess the reason for my call is, and I've heard, I'm new to, your work. It seems that, your philosophy or idea is to go into court and kind of beat them at their own game. Whereas I've been more studying a little bit about I don't want to call it freeman or sovereign, aspect of it. I mean, can you explain a little bit more? Like, if you're having more success by actually playing their game, where the other philosophy is not to actually play their game, and that the laws don't apply to us, and how that's going to work here in Canada for me? Because, like one of the previous callers, it seems like I'm in court, several times a year. It seems some sort of an attraction that I just get randomly pulled over, or is this my bad luck, to constantly getting these motor vehicle fines. And just a couple of weeks ago, I got a jaywalking ticket, believe it or not. The cops, and here, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, the police, they don't even give you a chance to ask questions, or they've been now trained to just get your driver's license off you and not answer your questions. It's just like, give me your driver's license, give me your ID, and they're ready to go to physical force. So I don't know. I know.
Let's get into the right to travel stuff. And I can't believe we can't go a show without this crap coming up. Okay. There's a number of reasons why. It is always going to be more effective for us in these situations to look at the evidence that the prosecution is supposed to have. That do they have evidence to meet their burden? Can they prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt with facts, not argument, facts? As opposed to, because that's a very easy burden to meet. Very easy to show that. Just like when I spoke to that law professor, it's very easy to show, because they'll start spewing verbal diarrhea. Well, the laws apply as a matter of law. Stupid things like this. So, the other side of it, like I was just unfortunately discussing with Matt in Evansville, when you take strict issues of law that don't require, it's just what the laws say. So they want to argue that the laws don't actually require a driver's license. So what their position is, we're not challenging whether the laws apply. We're challenging whether the interpretation of the law is correct that the cop, the prosecutor, and the judge are using. And that is a really, really high burden of proof. It's a very high legal standard. And they can actually be responsive to you and show conflicting decisions. They can show you, well, your interpretation may actually be plausible, sir, but the courts disagree with that interpretation, and I have to go by what the courts say. It's just not a very effective way of doing it. Plus, those cases that they mentioned were overruled or cherry-picked. It's just like this somebody who likes to come on here and say, oh, the Supreme Courts have ruled that the Constitution doesn't apply to citizens. Or they'll say, this is another one, oh, they say that, the statutes, the Supreme Court said statutes are not law. What they did was cherry pick. The court said an unconstitutional statute is not law. And so people then run with that and they go to court and they haven't actually verified it, which is really easy to do nowadays. It's not like 30 years ago. So, yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would not recommend doing that. Whether you're in because I tell you right now, if you're in Vancouver and you start pulling that legal interpretation stuff, they'll pull out Meads versus Meads and they'll hammer you with that. In fact, you may not know this. We had somebody in Saskatoon who's denied a trial where they based the entire conviction on a bound copy of Meads versus Meads, which Meads versus Meads is John Rooker, who went through all the legal interpretation that used by freemen or sovereign citizens and showed that their legal interpretation was wrong. Okay. Never a good idea. It's almost never a good idea unless you have a very high-priced attorney who is extremely well-respected in the community that can argue a legal interpretation for you. And chances are you're still going to lose and have to bring it up on appeal. But other than that, stay away from legal interpretation and pure issues of law.
Okay, now, I have heard you mention that there are people that are, have defeated their tickets here in Canada. I just find it like basically all our rights, every time I've been to court, have pretty much been stripped away. I mean, I've had cases, where, I provided them proof that I was going out of town and they would not move my court date. This seems pretty fascist to me, where I gave them proof of a conference, airline ticket, car rental, hotel, everything, and they said, no, we're not going to move the court date, and you have to show up here, otherwise you're guilty. So it just seems like, and we don't really have a real constitution here. It was written in 1982 or something like that, and it seems like they just stripped away any rights of the average person. I found like the only way I can get off is to, if the cop doesn't show up. Otherwise, it seems like everything the police or, the Crown is going to use, that's 100% solid, and they don't even have to give much testimony or evidence. It's written into law.
Well, the thing is, Mac, I understand and appreciate, I get it. And we have had success regardless. I mean, we have the evidence. I'm not going to argue with anyone on YouTube about it. We have the evidence. I have it on my website, and the evidence speaks for itself, and I post it in many videos. Even though when push comes to shove and they force you into that, and yet it's not about fairness. They took control over that landmass by force. This is historical record. You can fantasize, you can smoke pot, and you can imagine that, dude, it's all voluntary. There's no gun against my head right now. Wow. I didn't realize that if there's no one forcing me, dude. Dude, there's no gun in the room right now. I'm not being forced. You can fantasize that, but that doesn't change the fact that no one in Canada has a choice. But to get, and I know we're almost out of time for the show, but in a situation like that, and they force you into the trial, because you can always ask for a continuance, and if you don't get that, there's remedies for that. But let's say you have to go. You can put the police officer on the stand, and you can ask him for the evidence. And yeah, more than likely what they're going to do is they're going to continue denying you a fair trial, and they're not going to allow an effective cross-examination of the witness. So you can ask the witness for the facts that his opinion or his belief or claim that there was probable cause to stop you. You can ask him for the facts that he relied on, and they'll say he can't testify. And then, you can use that against them. And sometimes it's not going to work out, and you have no choice, but you have to appeal it. But we have had success on appeal, even in Canada. Keith in Hamilton or Keswick, on the other side of the continent there, he won on appeal. So it's not like we haven't done it before. It sucks if you have to, But he won based on a lack of evidence. The prosecution didn't have the evidence, and the prosecution couldn't lie well enough to the judge that they had the evidence.
Okay. Well, it seems like I need to do more study of your work. I'm not totally grasping everything that you're saying or teaching here.
Sure. Well,
so is that all available on your website, or like?
Yeah, so I also have a book called Government Indicted. It's all broken down in there, but I talk about this stuff on every show. So in a minute or so we have left, we'll just discuss the basics. We're applying the principles of logic, and so the basic premise. And I just did a video with some of these tips. You're going to challenge the prosecution's claims against you. You're going to not give the prosecution any sacred cows or free passes. None of his claims are immune from challenge. And you're going to challenge the foundation of his claim, which is, dude, dude, man, you're like physically here, eh? And if you're here, the laws like apply. Yeah. See, you're going to challenge the assertion that just because you're physically in Canada, their laws apply and give them jurisdiction over you. Because the burden of proof, logically, is on the accuser. Even in court, the burden of proof is on the accuser. Okay? So that's what you want to do. And you want to ask what's called leading questions when you're talking to the police officer, the cop, or the judge. And you want to assume that everything they say is a lie so that you will challenge it and not let it go. We only accept responsive answers. And a leading question has the information in the question. You're not going to ask an open-ended question or non-leading, is where you're leaving the answer up to them, and they can make a narrative. They can surprise you, and they can say whatever they want. And then you stop them from doing that by asking a leading question which requires yes or no or I don't recall. So a leading question would be, did you determine on your own, Mr. Police Officer, that the laws applied because I was physically in Canada and that gave you jurisdiction over me? That's a leading question. Saying, why did you determine the laws applied to me, is an open-ended question. Now he can answer any way he wants. Okay? And that's not a very good question to ask. Anybody worth their salt who's ever gone to court, everyone who knows anything about court will always tell you the same thing that I've said on the show for years. Every question on cross-examination should be a leading question. I just take that and put it over like every question we ask, except in very limited circumstances, should be a leading question.
Okay, just to finish off here. So I've heard you say that many times, like the laws don't apply.
Wait, one moment. Okay, say that one more time.
So I've heard you say that several times, like about because I'm physically in British Columbia. Let's just say, how do the laws apply to me? Well, saying it in the way you wanted to say it, I don't understand the flip side of that. Like what is, let's just say, what is my argument there? Like what is our argument that we're trying to get out of them, that the laws don't apply?
Well, we're trying to bring out that the prosecutor, the accuser does not have evidence to support their claim. So they either have to disagree with us in one of two ways. They will try to say and repeat their claim as if that is evidence. Or they will say to you, we don't need evidence. We do not need evidence. I had a prosecutor, and she's on the website. You got to go through the Call of Shames, where she said, I don't have to prove the laws apply, and the judge is not going to require me to do that. And I said, oh, so you get to argue without evidence, and you know in advance the judge will allow that. And then she got all snippy with me and said, I'm twisting her words. So that's part of what we do, is we want to confirm that that's their actual position.
And what is the evidence we're looking for that the laws apply?
There is no evidence. All you're doing is calling a bluff. Because just like Robert Diab said, that law professor, it's not based on evidence. evidence. It's just an assertion. They're making a claim. It's no different than someone saying, well, if you use this essential oil, it'll cure your diabetes. There's no evidence to that. And so you could say, well, Mark, what evidence would you, well, I'd like to see a study. I'd like to see some empirical proof to back up your claim. I want to see proof that the oil actually cures diabetes. You know, you're the one saying it. So a lot of what this comes down to is we have to enforce the only way we can by, just our words and to keep the focus on the prosecutor's burden. You made the claim. Don't ask me to fill in the blanks for you. Imagine it, Mac, it's like a card game. They're saying, hey, I've got a winning hand here, and it shows that I beat you. All right, put your hands, all right, put the cards on the table. No. You tell me what cards will satisfy you, Mark. Do you see how stupid that sounds?
Oh, yeah. So basic, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that example explains just how stupid it is to say, what evidence will... Put your cards on the table and make your case. I will then use the principles of logic to determine if the facts you're presenting prove the proposition is true. But you have to lay your cards on the table first. You don't get... It's completely illogical to turn around and... Well, you tell me what cards will satisfy you.
Yeah, basically, I think what you're getting at then is and it goes with the other philosophy, is we're calling them on the fact that, hey, they're arbitrarily claiming like brute force, or that the crown, the government owns us, and we're their slaves and their property because the laws apply to us, but they don't have any proof. So it goes kind of along that argument.
It has to do with taking. You don't need to make it any more complicated than it is. Take the actual claim they're using against you. And that is, if you're physically in Canada, our laws apply. End of discussion. And that's it to them. It doesn't matter whether you were born in Canada or not. They believe that the laws apply to me if I cross an imaginary line. They believe the laws apply to me if I have money from a Canadian source, just like they do in in California. So you never even have to set foot in there. But that's the basic premise that they're saying. We have control. Look, if it's Canada, the laws apply. And we just want to know, oh, okay, if you believe that that's true, tell me why. What facts, if any, do you rely on to prove that that's true?
Okay. It's making a lot more sense to me.
Get rooted in the basic principles of logic that the premises have to support the proposition. And learn your basic logical fallacies, which are going to help you understand when you're getting a non-responsive answer or you're getting a line of BS. So real quick before I let you go, a standard line that you may get, at least out of court, is, and I have video with where I confronted the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, so you can watch him say this. And he agreed that if I'm in Arizona, the laws apply. And I said, well, what evidence, if any, do you have? What facts prove that just because I'm physically in Arizona, your Constitution applies? And he said that they prosecute and put other people in prison. And, you're able to show that that's a logical fallacy, that it's a non sequitur. They don't connect. So, the right thing to do would be to say to him, exactly how does putting someone else in prison prove it applies to me? And of course, he wouldn't be able to do that. So, but, I appreciate the call. So, keep in touch and go to the website and, you can reach me off of there. So any questions or concerns you may have, I'm happy to address them.
Yeah, I sent you a Skype message just so I have you on Skype, and okay. I definitely will be reaching out some more to get a lot more clarification. I appreciate the time.
All right, appreciate the call, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. My name is Mark Stevens. We went over the live broadcast here. I forgot that I muted the feeds. I didn't realize I went a little bit over time over here. Appreciate all the support of the show. Jan, the dude, Don, Nelson, I don't want to leave people out, but Dan, and of course, Mr. Bill, Bill up in New Hampshire. Appreciate the support there. It's been the episode. Oh no, September 8th, live edition of the No State Project here on LRN.FM, and right now just on my YouTube channel. Again, because people want me to edit I'm probably going to just do an audio only of this broadcast so that it doesn't have all the breaks in it. So, don't worry about the comments. So don't leave too many comments. They're all going to get deleted anyway. There's no nefarious reason for that, although I can't change the mind of the delusional. That's just the way I do it. So if you go back in the history, I used to always pull down the live feed, not just because the video was horrific, but because I was able to then put graphics up. So when I'm talking about a certain rule or a ruling, I can put the graphic in and it gives people a little bit more information. It's not because I'm afraid of the comments that are left on my YouTube channel. So, anyway, I do appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll be live on the Wednesday commercial-free broadcast. So till then, salud!